Welcome to Total Retail Talks, your podcast channel for retail knowledge.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Total Retail Talks. I'm Joe Keenan, the editor-in-chief of Total Retail, and I'm pleased to be joined on this episode by Alex Reveles, who is the Vice President of Global Brand Management at JanSport. And we're going to talk to Alex about a little bit about JanSport's plans for 2024, particularly as it seeks to engage with and acquire the Gen Z shopping community. So thanks for joining me today, Alex.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
So I'd love for us to get started by telling us, I think probably everyone in the audience is, or most everyone, I'm sure, is probably familiar with the brand JanSport. So with that in mind, I'd like for you to tell us a little bit about your role within the company.
Sure. So I lead global brand management for JanSport, and I've been with the brand since 2011. So I started out in the creative department and then moved over to brand marketing. And this really allowed me to steer the brand a bit within more purpose-driven work. So back in 2020, we launched one of our campaigns, Lighten the Load, which was a mental health initiative for our Gen Z JanSport consumer. And then earlier this year, I became VP of Global Brand Management. So I currently lead JanSport in celebrating this generation of protagonists within their own lives, which is Gen Z.
Yeah, this is great and an exciting opportunity. And we're going to talk a lot about Gen Z. So maybe we would just start there in terms of why that target, why that demographic is, and why is it so important to JanSport, the Gen Z shopper?
Yes. So we know JanSport is beloved by all ages, but Gen Z is really at the core of our brand because they are at the pulse of emerging culture. You know, they're influencing a very broad spectrum of consumers, driving both culture and commerce. And they're early adopters. You know, they're looking for innovation, they're looking for new trends. And they're the next generation of change makers. And our hope is to be able to stay with them as they enter their next phase of life and really being a brand that they can trust and rely on for the entirety of their lives. You know, Gen Z is also an exceptionally entertaining generation to talk to. You know, their fluidity really keeps them interesting and very complex. Which also makes them really important to fully understand. There really is not a one-size-fits-all model, you know, with this generation, and you really have to embrace them in order to understand them. So when we develop product and marketing initiatives, Gen Z's needs are at the forefront, so we can provide them with either a solution or support. So for example, from a product perspective, you know, making sure to introduce products that add ease into our consumers' day-to-day life. And then from an overall brand perspective, really looking to connect around our key brand values, which are around mental health and inclusivity, sustainability, which are and happen to be really important values of our Gen Z consumer as well.
So we're going to talk more about the product in a minute, but let's get back to kind of the behaviors you're seeing this Gen Z shopper exhibit. Specifically with your brand, it's probably, I'm sure you've done some external research and looking at kind of the greater landscape in terms of Gen Z shopping behavior. What are we seeing from this demographic?
Definitely. You know, young consumers, most specifically Gen Z, they have a very unique kind of purchasing values, and they're willing to kind of put their dollars in ways that really show support for those values. So they're seeking out brands that are out to create change alongside them, not just for them. So what we're really seeing is this generation that wants to feel represented. They want to feel empowered, whether that's body positivity, wellness, environmental consciousness. You know, they want to see themselves and their values within the brands that they choose. So we're really seeing that they want to have, you know, all types of bodies represented in marketing materials, not only just pertaining to actual body types and like skin tones, but it's also really important to include different capabilities of consumers. So making sure to include those that use mobility devices as an example. And this is actually what inspired our launch of the Adaptive Collection earlier this year, which is really an effort to embrace every consumer and really live up to our values of inclusivity. Gen Z is also a generation that is not afraid to share how they really feel and what they believe is right. So we're expecting Gen Z to be more involved than ever before next year, especially in an election year. And this generation has grown up in this time of, Instagram filters, Snapchat stories that are highlighting really specific moments, right? Of like kind of the best moments in time. And we're seeing this consumer really growing tired of kind of the fake, and they're looking and yearning for authenticity. And they're searching for that from both brands as well as how to incorporate that within their own personal lives.
So you've done all this research, learned about how the Gen Z consumer is behaving, and your role in brand management. How do you then take that information you've collected and then align it with the messaging that you're sending out to your Gen Z customers, kind of making sure that everything fits naturally and seamlessly and is aligned correctly with what your Gen Z shopper is looking to hear from brands such as JanSport?
Our brand's core values have really remained the same since day one, right? JanSport is with you for life. We strive to be inclusive, serve our communities, as well as listen to our consumers and make sure that we're growing and changing alongside them. And it just so happens actually this year, Merriam-Webster's dictionary chose authentic as their word of the year for 2023. And I think for brands, it's more important than ever before, right? To make sure that you're showing authenticity, which means being honest and transparent and unfiltered. And JanSport is truly a brand that loves to keep it real. And so, like in recent years, JanSport has communicated this through shining a light on mental health and embracing our consumers where they are, making sure to show them that we're always with them for whatever it is that they're going through. So back in March, we had our March Madness influencer campaign as a good example that really focused on young collegiate athletes' mental health. We also launched a health-focused campaign around mental health in May. And then we also continue to make sure to integrate JanSport into pop culture. So we partner with people in TV and film to ensure that our brand stays kind of front and center there. If you've watched a Netflix show recently or a Hulu show, and there's like a scene that takes place on a college campus or high school campus, 9 out of 10 times you're going to see a JanSport backpack, and that's not by accident. That really helps us to really maintain kind of a center point in youth culture on a global scale. We also partner with content creators and influencers who really speak directly to our Gen Z consumers. So we've worked with people like Emma Rogue, Dwellers, Christology in the gaming world, and Eunice Chang as a skateboarder that really have a very strong Gen Z audience and can authentically connect our brand on a peer-to-peer level with their followers and their Gen Z audience.
And to your point, Alex, keeping it real with the audience, being authentic, I guess the point there too being that, they'll call you out on it, right? If you're not being real, you're not being authentic, this consumer base has no problem kind of calling you out and calling a brand out on that. Have you found that to be the case?
Well, without a doubt, Joe. I mean, yeah, you really do have to. And when I say being authentic, I think it's easy for a brand to want to jump into every cause or every meme. And it's really important that every brand looks at their own authentic values as a brand and making sure that you're communicating through the lens of those that are truly aligned with who you are and what you can actually participate in as far as your kind of brand core values are concerned. But yeah, I mean, they certainly won't pause to call you out if you're doing something that really does not feel authentic to them.
So you've touched a little bit upon the product, Alex. Let's dig a little deeper into that and tell us a little bit about how you're evolving your product mix to be relevant and valued by these Gen Z shoppers.
Yes. So as Gen Z starts to age up a bit, they're heading into their job era, right? So they're really looking at demanding routines, they're entering new environments. And so JanSport is looking to continue to evolve with them within this transition. And we have our newly launched Liminal series. So the Liminal series is designed for a more elevated, a more mature aesthetic. And it has a variety of new kind of more technical enhancements, right? Easy access pockets and extra comfort. So the bags are built with durability and sophistication to make sure they're carrying students throughout college and into their adult life. Along with these more mature styles, we also have new stylish bag designs that are really looking to resonate with this Gen Z's attraction towards baggy fits. So, along with that, we also have a new revamp of our collection of totes that also kind of fit into this trend. And on the trend side, there's also style, trends and things like that. There's also general trends around travel that we're seeing. So we're seeing students looking to take gap years, looking to take a break between college and entering the workforce, or after high school before college. And so we're looking to introduce a collection that really plays into this, focusing on traveling, but this idea of kind of a minimalist mentality of people that aren't looking to travel with tons of luggage and backpacks, and really looking for kind of a singular opportunity to kind of pack all of their items in. We're also seeing, just over the past couple of years, there's been this increase in consumer desire for adaptive fashion. So people with disabilities or those who use mobility devices are a large group, but yet they're often underserved and underrepresented. And Gen Zers are paying attention. If brands aren't designing for accessibility, they notice. And as a brand that has inclusivity as one of our core values, we really saw this as an opportunity to put action within our product line. So this is one of the many reasons we launched the Adaptive Collection. So this features two styles geared towards those with limited mobility, but they have a very classic look and feel of a JanSport backpack. And we were able to work together with the community to bring it to life, which we're all extremely proud of. And then this year in 2024, we'll also plan to launch new colors and styles to expand out the collection. And then we also continue to showcase sustainable product innovations. And this is another really important component of our brand. So we have our surplus collection, which has laundry bags and totes. We also have a restore collection that's made out of textile waste, and all of our 600D, which is majority of our product line. So like 8 out of 10 of our bags are made with a recycled 600D poly, which we're just really excited to continue to drive and to evolve as we move forward.
So as you talked about your product there, Alex, a couple things that you talked about spurred a thought in my mind. And as you think about the Gen Z shopper, obviously they're not unlike any other demographic that, they want quality product, but they value what the brand believes in, some of the social causes, like you talked about the adaptive collection, that inclusivity piece to the equation, also sustainability. So that thinking about that, that's a little more prevalent in the Gen Z consumer, making purchase decisions with some of those social issues in mind as well?
Without a doubt. I mean, we really do see them putting their dollars into brands that support causes that are meaningful to them. And so it's a really important kind of consideration factor as we look at our product line, and making sure that we're integrating and showcasing our own brand values kind of authentically through that lens as well.
So we've talked a lot about how you're learning about your customers' behavior, the messaging that they want to hear, the products that they want to see. So thinking about that as you bring that product to market, messaging to market, there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes, and there's a lot of technology at play here to help you kind of enable that process. Tell us a little bit about how at JanSport you're leveraging technology, particularly artificial intelligence, to help you kind of gather these insights and then turn them into kind of the personalized experiences that consumers are expecting.
I would say at the moment, we're really beginning to use AI rather sparingly, but we are continuously keeping a very close eye on how we can use it to better communicate and just show up for our consumer. We do have capabilities kind of from the back end of our website to make sure we're understanding our consumer journey better, from the types of colors that they're gravitating towards, the kind of searches that they're doing on our site. And these insights have really helped us better understand how we can really show up for our consumers and capture their desires with the products that they want.
So as we release this episode here in the first week of the new year, I'd love to get your perspective, Alex, on the growth opportunities that you're targeting for JanSport this year.
Yes, so we've had a very successful back to school season in 2023, and we're anticipating an even stronger 2024 as we continue to really innovate our products and our messaging. And we always do studies to really check in. And so the studies that we've done recently with our partners, we're seeing that our consumers are really continuing to resonate with the brand. We have very high brand awareness. We've determined that actually 1 in 3 US students currently own a JanSport. So we're feeling really, really great about that. I think for us, we're continuing to innovate our product collections this year, just as we did last year. We see an opportunity to expand on travel, specifically from more of a student's point of view, and making sure that we're always aligning on the trends and styles. As always, our designers, our color experts are always excited for what's coming up. They take a lot of inspiration from, the fluidity in fashion and aesthetics that they see. And this really includes creating products with new prints and materials such as denim, which we see as a key trend for this year as well. I think specifically within the Gen Z audience, we're anticipating a couple of trends to really lead at retail. I would say the first is around this idea of work routines. So as Gen Z heads into the workforce, they're in this kind of transitional phase of life that's requiring kind of new routines and environments. So I think that this is going to be a big one from a retail perspective. I think the second one is this idea of simplicity, and it's really being magnified right now. I think Gen Z is eager to simplify all aspects of their life, and they're really adapting kind of minimalist design. So really like thinking through even the idea of going on a trip and, keeping it to just one item versus bringing a bunch of stuff with you, right? I think another one is around this idea of involvement and that connection to value. Like we mentioned earlier, Gen Z is expected to be more involved than ever this year, being an election year. And then I would say lastly is around kind of this idea of self-expression and more kind of nostalgic fashion styles. So, Gen Z really has this very diverse spectrum of style, and leaning into aesthetics that best represent who they are and what they like. So whether that's maximalist cottagecore or dark academia, it's really leaning into, what best represents them in the moment, as well as this continuation of that kind of nostalgic fashion style, those 90s kind of 2000s trends.
Yeah, so being willing and not only being willing, but also being able to innovate and be adaptable based upon the trends that you're seeing from this demographic of Gen Z shoppers that, quite frankly, trends change quickly. So you have to be kind of willing and able to then adjust on the fly in many cases, right, Alex?
More than ever. Yes, you really do. I mean, things change quicker than ever, honestly. I mean, especially with social media and just kind of the ongoing news cycle, as you really have to be, able to pivot at a moment's notice.
Well, I think you have a lot of exciting things planned for 2024, and we're excited to see what's to come from JanSport. I want to take the opportunity to thank Alex Reveles, who is the Vice President of Global Brand Management at JanSport, for joining us on this episode of Total Retail Talks. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks again, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please check out our podcast channel page at mytotalretail.com/podcasts for show notes. Total Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review this podcast. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Total Retail Talks.